is calculating what is this theoretical overshoot day. This year it is globally on July 24th. It's coming up front all of the time. And not so happy day for the Europe is that we are having the European Overshoot Day today, the April 29th. And to have a sustainable system, the ambition level needs to be right. And if you wouldn't remember anything else about this first part, please do remember that you need to set the bar right. And it should be the tenfold resource efficiency in our systems and in our economies. Then we are sharing the discussion together with Manuela Ripa, my very good colleague from Globe EU, and I'm very happy to co-chair and answer the questions of the students today. So wholeheartedly welcome to you too.
Thank you, Sirpa.
And now we'll move for the discussion and the QA session. And we'll start with Mia Guerrero. I hope I pronounced your name right.
Yes, you did. So my question is, what laws and measures does the European Union have in place to tackle overconsumption? Are these measures effective in reducing excessive consumption?
Well, we have quite a lot of policies. We have a circular economy package. We do have the initiative of sustainable food, the farm to fork. And we have the textile strategy and new legislation about consumers' rights. And we have changed our construction materials regulation and also the consumer's right to get adequate information. So a lot of actions. But then, as I said, when the bar needs to be right, I think that we are not even in the halfway yet. And we are concentrating quite a lot in recycling the waste. And that is a good part, how you recycle these things. But the idea should be there to use less, longer and more effectively and sparingly. So choose the materials so that you design the waste off. Increase the longevity of the products, increase the repairability, upgradability, the reusability of different parts, and then the recycling should be the floor level, the last effort. And there, I think that we still have together a way to go.
Thank you.
And then Alice Marquez.
Indeed. So how would you both evaluate the EU's alignment with the Paris Agreement goals on curbing overconsumption?
Well, I think that that is very in-line question with Mia's question. And if you look at the graphs, actually I think I should have brought one. If you would want to align with the 1.5 degrees target, we should be having almost double the ambition level. And then what we are doing now is leading to this kind of increase of CO2 emissions. And where that leads is that later on we should be doing much more drastically and faster. And it becomes even more difficult in all industrial sectors. So I would say that we are lacking roughly the half of the action and efforts in all sectors, from food to energy, from transportation to production of be it whatever material and goods.
So thank you very much for your question, Alice. And unfortunately, I have to say I have to agree with my dear colleague Sierpa that what the EU is doing at the moment doesn't lead that the overconsumption day will rather be later than sooner. but exactly the opposite. I think we had a very good start in the last legislation with a very ambitious package. Sierpa already mentioned it, the European Green Deal. Maybe for everybody who doesn't know, it's a real a framework where we try to tackle everything. We try to reach by 2050 carbon neutrality, and we are going from different sectors, from the mobility sector to the foodstuff sector to the environmental sector. So we're tackling a lot of issues, but unfortunately, regarding overconsumption, we are not there where we should be, because also regarding the European Green Deal, there are many challenges. First of all, we're looking very much at decarbonization. It's really important, but we're not looking enough at the systematic reduction of the absolute use of things. So this is a mancum. And another mancum is that we're seeing at the moment that we have a slight setback of the European Green Deal, meaning we had very important targets and very important ambitions to reduce things that we're consuming at the moment, but there is a kind of setback, because instead of really binding targets, we are going back to more voluntary measures. And I don't know if this is the right approach, and I definitely think it is not the right approach. So we should be very careful. We should, as EU, lead as a role model in our resource efficiency, but also in resource sufficiency. And there we're still lacking very much behind. So there are many things that we can do. Everybody can start by themselves, reducing less. For example, when we're talking about fast fashion, is it really the right way? Maybe you also tackled this issue at school. It's very important. Do we always need very cheap, very new clothes all the time? Because this is using a lot of resources. But of course, it's not only to you, it's also regarding other aspects that we have. And I think one of the most important things in society is that these measures of reducing CO2, but also of changing a lifestyle, are accepted by people. And there is a big problem that we have a lot at the moment, that people think, why should I reduce things? Why should I don't eat too much meat or whatever when all the others do? And so in order to get this acceptance of the people, we need a kind of reward system we're working on at the European Union at the moment, like that, for example, if you have a lower CO2 footprint, you get some money back. In some member states it works already, and this would be a good thing, and that is why we should go on with this kind of models. And also, what is very important for me as a mother, we should allow everybody a healthy lifestyle, meaning that they can eat healthy things like a lot of fruits and vegetables, and that these are affordable for everybody. And regarding the overconsumption, we have to go back. A very important legislation that we started in the last legislation that we have to move on here is really to be more, to have more circular economy, to have less waste. Waste, I'm always saying, is a luxury that we can't afford anymore. So we really have to go back to a good circular economy, and Europe should lead as a role model here for the whole world, so that everybody is taking up these things.
Follow-up question. As the Energy Efficient Directive aims, we are supposed to focus on technical improvements, but then there's not much legislation around addressing consumption habits, like on aviation or fast fashion. And then, as you said, we're relying a lot on voluntary consumer mentality, conscience. But then, do you believe that we should put some legislation around those, like targeting those sectors, like limiting absolute consumption? Is it possible?
It's definitely possible, but it's a huge step, of course, and we should not leave people alone. You know, we as politicians, I think it's an important role as politicians to tell them, listen, we can do it together. We help you. Maybe at the beginning you have some problems also in your industry, but money is there. We can support you so that you can do this very important transition, because let us not forget, just doing short-term policies that will help industry in a short term does not help it in a broader term. So we need really, especially we as politicians, need to see the long vision, not the short vision. And that is why I think we really definitely need binding targets to get there. And then we have the Fit to 55 package, where we say we want to have less CO2 emissions by 2030 in order to get by 2050 CO2 free. And in order to get there, in my belief, you can only have it via binding targets, but this should be feasible for everybody. So in a certain way, we shouldn't tell them you just, for example, for the transport sector need only electricity. This does not work. Of course, here we have to be more technology open. So not too much trying to tell people what they have to do and how, but to give them some opportunities to do so. But of course, the only voluntary approach will not lead us there.
Okay, thank you very much. That was.
Thank you. Then we turn to Edwards Pavluts.
Thank you. Many times, oftentimes, in media, social media, as well as television, politicians and media speakers talk about lots of policies and ways we try, and in the future and right now, how we try to fight the causes of overconsumption and also causes of global warming and climate, and also minimize the effects of global climate, the overconsumption. And many oftentimes, as we already mentioned, this package, this deal, the European Green Deal, what are the roles? What is the role of the European Green Deal in fighting overconsumption?
That's a very good question, because the environment and the consumption doesn't happen in vacuum. We have an economic system that is the blood circulation of the societies. And if the incentives there are so that it is always cheaper to avoid the environmental costs, to outsource them, then the products of that kind of a companies that take them into account are more expensive. And for consumer who doesn't have that much of a money, it's easier to pick up, for example, €5 T-shirt instead of picking up a 30 € T-shirt. And quite often you don't, or you can't think that, okay, the 30 € T-shirt might last about 10 times longer than the cheapest one what you can find. So the incentives in the economy has built in years before we thought and understood the planetary boundaries. We are from our budget subsidizing fossil fuels and fossil economy when we are trying to cut back the emissions. And in our incentives and policies, the incentives to green and effectivize the companies is coming at the moment, but it has not yet been there. And actually, Roberta Metsola talked about our competitiveness. The only way how we can be very competitive in the Europe is to be very environmentally friendly and effective. Why? Because we are most dependent on imported resources of all the regions. So if we can effectivize the use, we can control better the whole chain of raw materials. Always when you innovate new cars or new products, they are better in quality in other fields too, when they are more environmentally friendly. So you create better products. And to be competitive, you have to create better products. The new cars are not worse than the old cars, even though they are EVs or they are more energy efficient. So how to make the trick? You need to change your budget laws, your support systems, what you subsidize. You need to incentivize the companies, startups that are doing the new innovations. You need to create the financial reporting so that we know how the companies are functioning and the investors can put their money on the new emerging, more effective economies. You need to take that into account when you are planning the public procurement. So what are you buying with our common funds? You need to take that into account in Horizon program, what kind of a research you support so that you get the new innovation. And this all is the Green Deal, greening the economy. That's what we are trying to do here in European Parliament and in European Commission. It's a new way. We are learning on the way, on the run, how to be effective. But this is the only way how we can do it, because by only regulating or blocking something, you can't ensure that you have the new companies and new products. But you can ensure that the new products, by regulation and eco-design that sets the same rules for imported goods and products, that they are better for environment and consumers.
Yeah. Maybe just to add, we have to we don't need to look back of how we did industry, but we have to look forward, how we can do industry in a more sustainable and environmentally friendly way. And it's not that it's hindering competitiveness, but this will let us be competitive globally. So this is a very important aspect. And of course, as Sirpa rightly mentioned, we have to rethink the policies we did so far. And what would really help us and what would really help to tackle the overconsumption day is that we have a more circular, more local and more regional economy rather than what we have at the moment, a linear and a globalized economy, because this is also a weakness.
Question for both of you, if I may. Do you believe that this Green Deal and also not just the Green Deal, but also packaged with all the other policies and laws that we're making currently, do you believe that this would be enough to solve this problem?
I strongly believe in the European Green Deal. And you know why? Because the European Green Deal has the overall picture. It's not tackling things step by step, but it really has the overall picture that, as I already said at the beginning, we have to tackle everything, the mobility sector, the food sector, the energy sector, and the Green Deal is really doing it. But if we start now, because saying that, our industrial competitiveness is hindered and we are trying to reverse the European Green Deal, then we're really doing harm and we will not reach our goals. So we need to take up the European Green Deal, to see it as the chance that it is to be world leaders and to be sustainable and economic productive. And but we have to stick to it. We shouldn't, at the moment, there's a step in trying to dilute it, and that's the wrong way.
I also have a question for you both. How do you think we can educate young people about the Overshoot Day? Because, for example, I had no idea about the Overshoot Day before signing up for the academy. How can we educate also not only young people, but also our parents and everybody? Because it's something that not a lot of people know and that it should be known by more people, because raising awareness can help tackling the problem, especially like we said earlier, that a lot of the things want to be dealt by voluntarily. So maybe raising more awareness, how could you do that?
Why don't you, Manuela, start?
Yeah, for me, it's definitely important. You need to be empowered. So, of course, schools play a vital role here that you learn at school, the overconsumption. But as you rightly mentioned, also parents need to be empowered. And I strongly believe in the informed consumer, you know, that, for example, if you buy a product, that you have also a footprint there, a CO2 footprint, that could help, or that you make other informed choices. For example, if you buy a product, shower gel or something, that it's written on it, it contains plastic. So everybody, so microplastic, so everybody can decide by themselves, okay, I buy this, but I harm the environment and I harm myself, or I buy another product where it's not inside. But it must be clearly visible for the consumer in order to make informed decisions. And that is something I'm fighting very much for in the European Parliament, because, of course, industry can do a lot, but it's not that. We also, as consumers, we have the power to decide what kind of things are bought or not. Or for another example, as it's May at the moment or April, you see that we have strawberries from Spain or from everywhere, but unfortunately it's not the right time for it. So I'm always telling my children, listen, we don't buy it now because they're not regional, they're not local. We buy them when you have it here. So we also have to step back to think that we need everything the whole time. I mean, when I was a child, we got these products only when it was the season for it, and we have to go back to it. But this is not something that will come from industry. It needs to come from the consumer. So we also have a big responsibility here as consumers.
Well, I have a good trick for myself. Maybe it would work for others. I never buy anything if I just notice it in the shop and feel like, oh, this would be nice. And I leave it for the next day. And if I still want it and feel that I need it, and I want to do the effort of going to the shop and buying it, then maybe. So try to change the culture that if you have the money and if you can afford, you can buy a new pen or whatever. But on your question, actually, I would throw back the ball to you, because I think that the Climate Academy is a good model of this. And maybe this Climate Academy could be spread and duplicated to all European school systems, and hopefully the EU could support it. Because there's a wealth of information, as you know, about how the climate change is proceeding, what are the planetary boundaries, what is the importance of biodiversity or whatever. But not only what are the challenges, but then the means, how you can solve it, how it relates to politicians, how to contact the politicians, how to speak it up in the society with your friends or at home and so forth. And I think that could be one way, and thank you for being very active on this. Now actually...
Sorry, just before we get back into education, just a question about imports and responsibility. Just as the European Union is so reliant on imports, and we're kind of borrowing the digital footprint, even if locally we produce sustainably, it's not always the case outside of the European Union. Is there any way that, as a political body, the EU can or is planning to assist the consumers by bringing more like regional products, giving more attention or promoting those products? Is there any way, because Ms. Ripa, you said that the consumer is also very responsible and has a huge power, but is there any way that the EU can influence the consumers' decisions or educate? You know?
Well, I don't want to influence them, I want to inform them, you know, and to have the right label would already help. For example, I'm a big defender of made in Europe. For example, buy your jeans and it should be written on it, made in Europe. So you know that there is decent working conditions behind it, that the environmental impact is not that high because we have important environmental laws in Europe, and this could already help. Of course, then this jeans would be a little bit more expensive than jeans maybe from Bangladesh, But at least you know that it's made responsibly, and you know that maybe it will last also a little bit longer. So here maybe we should restart our thinking that we don't need 10 genes, but 3 good ones would already be enough. So labeling, a right labeling, for example, with a Made in Europe label would already be a good start. Or as I said, the other ones that we shouldn't have too many labels, but really informative ones.
But the problem with those locally sourced genes and products and all this stuff is that it's a lot more expensive, and most consumers can't afford those better and more expensive.
But here I'm again with you. Do we really need 10 genes? Can't you buy instead of 10 genes, 2 genes, and then you spend the same money? And the other thing, I was talking at the beginning about it, it's about healthy food, for example. A mother once told me, I can only buy vegetable fruits for my children when it's on sale. And this should not happen in Europe. This should be something that should absolutely not happen worldwide. So here we can have financial incentives. For example, that you don't put now I don't know the English word, Mehrwertsteuer, the index, the
VAT,
the tax, the
yeah.
VAT. Thank you so much, Sirpa. That we don't put VAT on it, so it would already be more affordable for people. And we should unhealthy food. That's not, you don't like to hear that, but unhealthy food like chips or that will contain too much sugar, too much salt, they should be more costly because they're a big burden, not only for a person who gets diseases out of it if they eat too much of it, but also for our health system. So there are incentives that we can also help, and we can make it affordable, healthy food affordable for everybody. Or we put an incentive, for example, also on European products. So try to buy them instead of others. But this argument with it will cost too much, for me, it doesn't fly because, as I said, you don't need 10 T-shirts. You can have less, but made in Europe.
And then about this label thing, what about if you have a label in textiles, for example, that the price of this T-shirt is 10 cents per using hour because it lasts longer. And the cheaper one, it might have 50 cents or €1 because if it's very bad quality, then actually you end up paying more for using it. And Eco-Design Directive actually puts the requirements for products that are imported in the EU. And then just to remind you about public procurement, what kind of a food, for example, we buy for the schools, and do we take there the sustainability? I just would love to continue this discussion with you, but while the time is running, I would like to invite Arnav Sharma from India to be online, and at the same time I would like to turn the ball to you, Manuela, to answer the questions and then to conclude our session. Arnav, please, the floor is yours. I'm sorry we can't hear you, so can you restart?
I can't hear anything.
There are still some issues with the connection. I don't know if someone could help us. Is it on the line, or maybe it is on the Indian side? So could you please continue speaking there, so maybe we can fix the problem, so that you can pose your questions for Manuela to answer.
you.
Agnew, can you try to speak?
I think he is speaking, but we can't hear him.
I think he's
think
too
it's the
far away
connection.
from the microphone.
Yeah, maybe you're
connection.
too far away from a micro. Can you get closer? No, you have it there. No, unfortunately, it's not working.
Am I audible?
Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes,
now
we
it's
can hear you.
perfect.
Yes. Greetings of the day, everyone. Greetings of the day, everyone. Esteemed members of the European Parliament, respected organizers, and my fellow sustainable champions. I'm Arnav Sharma, and I'm 14 years old, representing the RAN Group of Schools and Climate Academy from India. Thank you for giving this wonderful opportunity to participate in this esteemed event organized by Globe EU and the Climate Academy. My question is as follows. The Western media often portrays India as a major extractor and emitter. But measured per capita, Europe far exceeds India. For example, Belgium extracts an average of 26.9 tons per capita per year, whereas India extracts only 5 tons. Why do you think the media has such a distorted view of things?
Yes, thank you so much for your question. Okay. I just have to reread it because I'm very sorry I couldn't hear it very well. So I think it's about the consumption, how much Europe consumes and how much India consumes regarding the consumption of very high income regions regarding not so high income regions. Thank you so much for your question, and sorry that we had some problems with the technical problems there. I think it is high time to have this an honest and conversation about the role of high income regions. Like Europe is, like other states are. I mean, we also have a historical responsibility regarding this because there is a disproportion regarding global emissions and the resource use. And if we have a look at the consumption pattern at the moment, is that we exceed by far our fair ecological share. I mean, this is a truth that needs to be said. Anyhow, but I think it's not only about accountability, I think it's also about the willingness to lead the change. And as we have major disruptions worldwide, we know with the new election of President Trump in the United States, who's stepping back from the Paris Agreement, I really think that Europe needs to lead here and to path the way for another economy, for a more resilient economy, for an economy that is more based on circularity, as we just discussed this. But not only, and I think Europe should lead also in another way, and that is how do we look at how big our economy is or how powerful our economy is. At the moment, everybody is just looking at the GDP. But my dear colleague Sirpa and I did an event in March about new ways of pathing the way for economies, to make economies more resilient, to make economies more sustainable. And this conference had the name Charting the Path to Sustainable Economic Development, where we discussed with many different experts how we can build prosperity aligning with ecological limits. And this is not only something that the EU should look at, but we need to look at it worldwide. And that is that we should not only take the GDP as the whole guiding metrics, but we also should look at other indicators like sustainability, health, equality, and quality of life. And here we can learn also from other countries, for sure. And I think in the end, it's an effort from all of us. And we know what we need to change. I already said at the beginning, away from this linear model, more to a circular model. And here we can also tackle the CO2 emissions. And when we as Europe lead as a role model, we are not showing with the finger anymore on other states. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for answering my query.
Thank you, thank you. And I think, looking at the time, that I have to wrap up, Sirpa. So I would like to thank all of you for being here today, for looking at the problems with the Overshoot Day. I hope that you go back to school to rediscuss with your colleagues, and maybe you can come up with answers that we didn't give, and you will give to us. I would be happy to have a follow-up of this round table. Thank you so much, Sherpa, for inviting me also today, and I hope that you were happy with our answers. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Let's be in contact and continue the discussion. Have a very happy day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of course.
Welcome back to Globe EU's Overshoot Day event. We're live in the Vox Box for the second round of questions. Joining me is Sarah Mathieu, member of the European Parliament, and together we'll be discussing overconsumption and fielding questions from students. So let's get started with our first question from Zoe Nagy.
Thank you for having us today. My question would be how the European armament is impacting currently overconsumption policies.
Well, I'd say rearmament is kind of a vicious circle right now in that we see countries fighting to get to natural resources in order to be able to build weapons technology that is then used to go fighting again to gain access to natural resources. In many ways, armament and warfare in general are by nature overconsumption, and probably one of the worst examples of overconsumption. So it has an effect. I don't think it has a wider effect on the market, but it's definitely a negative impact on use of resource.
Thank you very much.
So in terms of promoting repairability, what technological solutions show the most promise in combating overconsumption?
Well, I think it's a very good question because repairability is indeed one of those things we can do to make sure that we don't, as we are doing now, are over-consuming, are buying products all the time and then just throwing them away, because of course that is very costly to people, but it's also very costly to the environment and to the climate. And I think one of the important things that we can do is look at the design phase and actually make sure via design we don't have overconsumption anymore. Because right now, I mean, a lot of people are just used to buying fast fashion or having a new phone every 2 years. This is really just a business model. It's not because people actually need to have a new device every couple of years. So, one of the things that we're trying to do in the Parliament is to make legislation that actually promotes repairability or even makes it that it's the only sort of stuff that can come to the market. But right now, there's a lot of pitfalls. For instance, in design, they will glue stuff together. They will make sure that there are not spare parts available when you want to repair things, or it's too costly, or you have to wait too long. Sometimes it's because repair people don't get the access to the information on how to repair stuff. I would say that we have made some progress with repairability, repair score, and all of those things, even though more products should be in the scope. But it's always difficult because, well, you are pushing people out of their business model, right? For instance, right now we're negotiating the repairability and recyclability of vehicles, so, the cars that we are driving. And also there you can see a lot of, well, not so good practices. For instance, in China, they do stuff like jija casting, where a big part of the car is just made in one piece. And of course, if something breaks, well, you can't replace it, you can't repair it. And so what I see there, as in many of these files, is a lot of lobby against it. But I also think there are quite some companies that do see the advantages of shifting that business model. For instance, having products as a service and not so much as just an individual purchasing system. So for me, it's about good legislation, but it's also really about making sure that we have the political will and the political clout to make sure that overconsumption is something of the past, and that's really what I want to fight for in this Parliament.
Okay, thank you. So you've stated some very good arguments, but how can these solutions be integrated into public policy and businesses effectively?
This one is for Bruno or for me?
Well, I think that the European Union has been trying to do that in several ways. The first one is the eco-design regulation that we have, and that should provide for systems that are designed to be recycled from the very start. Because what we see now is, of course, we're trying to build a circular economy, recycling materials, recycling components, but it's very hard to do if the product that you are trying to recycle has not been designed from the very start to be dismantled, to be taken apart, and where the components are identifiable and able to be separated from everything else. That's what the Eco Design Directive is aiming at. We're not yet there in the application, that's very, very clear. And we will definitely have a transition phase where we will still be confronted with lots and lots of products that are on the market and that have not been designed according to that regulation. Washing machine that you bought 10 years ago is not going to correspond with the current rules. Now, a second thing that we need to do is that at the other end of the process, which is to guarantee that through, for example, circular economy regulations, we have ways and rules that facilitate recycling. These days, it's very hard, for example, that once you designate something as waste, it's very hard to transport it inside of Europe. For example, from the place where it has been taken out of use to a place, if it's in a different country, where it can be recycled, where a company has the technology and has the people to do the recycling because of a lot of procedures there. I think that's one of the things we need to solve to facilitate the recycling, because right now it's very often easier to throw it away or to send it outside of Europe than to keep it in a recycling process within Europe. So there's work to do, but there's been steps that are going in the right direction, but they will take time.
And then just a follow-up question: how can we be sure that the repair will cost less than buying a new product, or just simply throwing it away and just never using that product again?
I'm sorry.
So just can we be sure that the product to repair it will cost less than actually buying a new product? And is there any way of making sure that the customer actually goes through some measures to get it repaired before throwing it away?
But the simplest way to make that possible is, of course, to make sure that repairing is affordable. If the cost of the repair is high, then obviously, and that's partly to do with the design, it's also partly to do with the availability. The easiest way to do it is probably if the owner of the product, and that's what Sarah referred to in the previous question, is offering it as a service. If I am renting my washing machine, then there is someone who has an interest in making sure it can be repaired, and with the knowledge of how it works, and with an incentive to make sure that the repairing is affordable as well, because they are the owner, and they will not get a better price from me if it's broken than when it's working and then when it's fixed. So I think that's a matter of incentives. Product as a service is one very good way to do that, and to make sure that people really have reasons to make it repairable and affordable.
Thank you.
I guess now we get a question coming from India.
Good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Good afternoon, honorable members of parliament. My name is Aishani Sween. I'm a 14-year-old student at Adani International School, proudly representing Climate Academy, India. I would now like to move forward with my question. Discussions at climate and biodiversity COPs highlight the necessity for global cooperation and innovative solutions. However, we must acknowledge that regions like the EU, the US, and other highly developed nations continue to emit greenhouse gases and deplete resources at disproportionate rates. Their consumption patterns significantly push us closer to critical planetary boundaries. Isn't it time to challenge these regions at COP events and hold them accountable for their environmental impact?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And I think it's a very important one, because I'm sure that we're all aware we are inching towards, again, a very important climate top in Belém in a couple of months. And I think this is going to be one of the big discussions, because it's about our historic responsibility as an EU and as, the west part of the world, where we need to admit that a big part of the problem is actually due to this historic emission and the prosperity that we have built that has unfortunately
coincided with an environmental and climate crisis. And so that means that we need to show leadership in the world, that we need to take our responsibility. And right now in the European Parliament, we are going to have a discussion on our climate goals for 2040. I think it's very clear what science there says. We should have a lowering of the emissions at 2040 of at least 90, and actually it should be 95 if we indeed want to take this historic responsibility. It's not going to be easy. There's a lot of backlash right now against this. And another discussion, of course, is climate financing, making sure that also there we take this responsibility to make sure that developing countries, for instance, have the resources but also the technology to make sure that they lessen their climate emissions. So for me, this is one of the big things that are at stake in the next couple of months, where I truly hope that we can convince the colleagues here in the Parliament, but also in the member states, that it's up to Europe to take that leading role. It's very clear we don't have to expect it from America, so it's even more important what we will do now. And we need to acknowledge, indeed, as you say, this big responsibility, not just of the past, but also of what is happening today. If you look at the loss of biodiversity, but also the climate emissions per capita. So voila, we will fight for this, and I hope we will come to a good conclusion in Belém.
Thank you for your response. If I may, can I follow up with a quick question?
Of course.
Yes, of course.
My research indicates that on average, Europeans consume between 27 and 40 tons of materials per person each year. Yet, to stay within planetary boundaries, this figure would need to drop by about 80% by 2050. What concrete policies is the EU considering to achieve such a drastic reduction, and how will you ensure this doesn't rely solely on outsourcing extraction and polluting other countries?
Well, that's really at the heart of the discussion that we are having right now, because, for instance, when we're talking about this 90% target, some in this parliament and some in the member state actually want to do what you say. So we would then buy clean air from other countries. I think it's a very bad idea, because that is really not taking that responsibility. When it comes to policy, there is already a very clear policy package in place with our 2030 goals. So that's the Fit for 55 package. And actually a lot of the things in that package will be very important also going into that 2040 goal. But a lot of these things are contested, and that is unfortunate. So we will have to stay our ground. For instance, one of the things that we will be discussing next week in the Parliament is our goals for CO2 for cars, so making sure that cars will emit less. This is about making sure that we renovate our buildings so that they will consume less energy. This is about making sure that we, the fastest we possibly can, completely switch to renewable energy, for instance, because of course it's much less polluting. I mean, there's a big package of things already at the table, but I'm sure that more will be needed, and that will also be a big part of the discussion once we have that target in place.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
Thank you very
seems
much
to have been the
for
last
answering
question.
our question.
I guess that's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Very welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.